So about a month ago, we got all these beyond hype announcements from Atlus, and the most surprising of them all was the official reveal of Metaphor Fantazio. Yeah, Project Fantasy wasn't dead. Now, as hype as the trailer is, it's actually the official developer interview that I really wanted to talk about in this video, since big chunks of it all but confirmed for me why I'm so drawn to Atlus games. And it was something I just had to ask you guys as well. What keeps you coming back for more? Well, I grouped all the main reasons from that community post together to share in the later half of this video. But first, I'd like to start diving into what exactly was said in the Metaphor interview, starting with this blurb from Hashino. Quote, "The reason Atlus has always focused on modern storytelling is because we've always felt like there were plenty of fantasy RPGs in the world, whereas contemporary RPGs always felt less common. At the time, that was our way of going against mainstream trends and defining our unique perspective and voice as a studio." So according to this list of credits on the Megaten wiki, Hashino has been with Atlus since at least 1994. Now, I was too young for gaming during the 90s, but as far as I can tell, most of the Japanese releases leaned on the Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest side of things. Maybe aside from Parasite Eve or Shenmue, perhaps? Like, nowadays it doesn't feel as hard to find other contemporary settings like the Yakuza or Ace Attorney series, for example. But way back then, it really did seem like Atlus was the only one consistently doing games set in our modern world. Now, some of these are obviously more grounded than others, with the Persona series in particular going in this direction. I'd say especially so once Persona 3 introduced the calendar and social link system, which really sold the fact that, aside from our Personas and Tartarus, we really were playing a mundane game. Attending school, studying, hanging out with friends, going to the mall, and so on. All these social sim qualities built up over the course of the Persona games and then just culminated in Persona 5, where something as simple as the smartphone texting function added so much to that feeling of modernity. And maybe this is just me, but I can't help but notice how it inspired the design of other games later. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying P5 was the first to use cell phones or anything, since even other Atlus predecessors did before, not to mention other game series like GTA, for example. But as far as I'm aware, using smartphone-based texting and later photos and video to build on the relationships between characters just wasn't something that was popularized until after Persona 5. I still have more to say about this urban fantasy topic in relation to the Metaphor interview, even though the game itself is Atlus's first foray into a traditional high fantasy game. But speaking of games that were influenced by Atlus, are set in a more high fantasy setting, yet also modern at the same time. In fact, it's a sci-fi feel, which is rare for anime-style games. This video is brought to you by Honkai Star Rail, a semi-open-world turn-based free-to-play gacha game with a heavy focus on story and lore. Featuring a fun protagonist, a diverse cast of characters, and a journey across the galaxies. And did I mention the gorgeous visuals and soundtrack? Star Rail is already a global hit and something I've been playing myself for almost 2 months now. Unsurprising, as the game is brought to you by Hoyoverse, the makers of Genshin Impact. And those of you who know me know how much I love that game. Now, the producer of Star Rail explained in an interview that the Persona and Trails series have had a major influence on the flow of HSR's combat and the game's emphasis on narrative. Even the very smartphone text mechanic I mentioned plays a big role in endearing you to the characters. Now, version 1.2 is dropping on July 19th with the epic finale to the Xianzhou Luofu arc. The first banner will feature the highly anticipated Blade, the deadly assassin of the Stellaron Hunters. He's a wind-type unit who punishes enemies with increasingly massive AoE damage the more hits he himself takes. So try out Honkai Star Rail with the link below, and use the included code to snag a free 50 Stellar Jades. But to segue back to the Metaphor interview, This other thing Hashino said really stuck with me. Quote, "When I think about the themes explored in past SMT or Persona games, the story always ties back to how people should live their lives in the present day." So again, I really love how basically all Atlus IPs are set on Earth itself in the 21st century, give or take, and not in their own fantasy worlds. Don't get me wrong, I still love my fantasy worlds as well, but at least for me, when I consider how even my day-to-day interests have always been really nerdy, with like learning more about our world and society from current events to the anthropology of everything and so much more, like, yeah, I'm that person who finds documentaries fun. Honestly, it shouldn't surprise me why I'm so drawn to these games. Just the demon/persona systems alone use exact characters from the mythological tales and religions of earthly cultures and countries. So even the most supernatural of elements in these games draw off of what exists in our own world. I feel like this gives even post-apocalyptic settings like mainline SMT a more grounded feel than the end of the world and otherworldly fantasies. I mean, you guys can probably tell just from the kinds of video analyses I do, from real Japanese sociocultural issues to mythology and Jungian stuff, just how much I love dissecting both the tangible and esoteric real-world inspirations that Atlus draws from. And honestly, it's super cool that I'm not alone in this, that the mythological figures are a huge draw for many of you as well. Like, just seeing all these different cultural influences exist in a single setting? Amazing. And for Persona in particular, it's nice to see all this appreciation for these otherwise normal characters dealing with contemporary problems. Persona strikes this nice balance of using the supernatural to make these issues a bit more palatable, for lack of a better word, yet still not shying away from commenting on and exploring these very real-world problems, even if Atlus doesn't always get it right. I like this comment from viewer Adam Shadow about how, on the contrary, other JRPGs resort to allegory or metaphor to address these same contemporary issues. So yeah, it's not a surprise that the real-world setting and social sim aspects were really popular answers for you guys too. And then some of you shared your personal experiences about how the themes, philosophies, and other thought-provoking qualities in these games were just there for you at the exact time you needed it in your life. I'm a very sentimental person, so I just want to thank you guys for leaving those comments on that community post, by the way. With that said, I just want to clarify, I'm not saying high fantasy-based stories can't inspire us to make changes in our real lives or in the real world. Hell, one of the most influential stories on me growing up is the beloved Lord of the Rings. But on that note, I love this particular quote Hashino found during the research phase of Metaphor. Quote, "Fantasy does more than immerse us in empty worlds of fiction. They exist because there's something in our world we want to change, and they help us reimagine something new." He said that looking at the genre from this angle really helped the team narrow down how exactly they could make Metaphor into a traditional high fantasy game, yet one that still aligns with Atlus's style and philosophy. At one point, he even thought that Metaphor was becoming too conventional like other fantasy RPGs, so like Atlus always does, the new Studio Zero started brainstorming what they could incorporate from our modern world. Soejima's section in particular really dove into how the character designs, art style, and so on of Re-Fantazio has elements of our own world thrown into the more medieval-ish fantasy setting. I don't have much insight to add in regards to the visuals that hasn't already been said by Johnny Awesome and LaRue in their amazing breakdowns of Metaphor's trailer. I highly recommend watching their respective videos for more secrets and speculation on what's been revealed so far. Links always in cards and description. But yeah, from the skateboarding to this grotesque human chimera-looking enemy and everything in between, I think everything shown so far lives up to that unique blend of elements Soejima mentioned. Atlus always has a certain je ne sais quoi when it comes to art style and direction, and quite a few of you mentioned the demon and character designs as a major draw factor. My bud Bubble Tea actually did a great breakdown on what makes Megaten UI so innovative and stylish. Yeah, even the pre-Persona 5 games, guys. So go check it out. Anyway, visuals aren't my expertise, but I do have a long time background in music, and that brings us to how much everyone loves Atlus's OSTs. I mean, so many of your comments mention the music in these games. Now, I genuinely think there's something to love about every genre, but I'm admittedly partial to classic instrumentation given the vast majority of my experience growing up is with orchestral ensembles. So I'm beyond excited to hear what Meguro has in store for Metaphor's score. This first piece we hear in the trailer is already quite different from his past compositions for Atlus. Well, maybe aside from a couple tracks like that one underrated boss one in Persona 4, you know the one I'm talking about, I will defend it to my dying breath. Now when it comes to bands, my favorite has always been and still is Muse. I genuinely enjoy how they experiment with their sound from album to album, but above all, I really do love the symphonic rock of The Resistance in particular. Symphonic metal bands are hella dope too. The blend of the classic and modern is just epic, and so I wonder if Meguro will give us some tracks like that, along the lines of the Genesis, for example. Something else that's really cool about this first Fantazio track is the blending of qualities from different cultures. Meguro explains his incorporation of Buddhist chanting into the backdrop of Western orchestral instrumentation, and it's definitely very intriguing. Genshin Impact is one of my favorite OSTs in all of gaming because of how seamlessly it blends the music traditions of various cultures into a symphonic backdrop. For example, Rage Beneath the Mountains incorporates ancient Chinese dialect with traditional Chinese instruments, and that's with the full orchestra accompaniment and epic electric guitars and bass section to boot. So again, blending the classics with the modern. I'm definitely not expecting a live performance quality from Metaphor because that costs big money. But composition-wise, I'm already loving what I'm hearing and can't wait to hear what else Meguro has in store for us. On a closing note, Hashino says that Metaphor's main theme is face your fears. But although this sounds simple, he doesn't want players to come away from the game thinking, well, that was a fun momentary escape, now back to reality where nothing has changed. Rather, he hopes players will feel genuinely inspired in their lives and maybe even empowered from playing Metaphor. Again, seeing how so many of you mention the draw of Atlus and Persona in particular is that it feels like real-world people going through everyday problems, I'm stoked to see what Studio Zero has up its sleeve with this all-new IP. I mean, Metaphor's trailer still opens with shots of our modern world, with the quote, "What if the world we live in today is their utopia?" Now, I do enjoy stories that explore the grass is always greener concept, so I guess we'll see if that's what Atlus is going for here. Now, you may have noticed my glaring omission of gameplay in this discussion-ish video. And well, that's because gameplay rarely makes or breaks a game for me personally, which I get is kinda weird considering we're talking about video games here. Many other creators have dissected Megaten's combat in way more depth than I ever could, so I'll just say these games are so satisfying to play. From the press turn and its similar iterations to Persona's combat and social sim balance, I just find the gameplay in these games really fun. Even Persona 3 Fez's AI tactics system. Yeah guys, I'll defend that to my dying breath too. Otherwise, I just really wanted to talk about my thoughts after first watching this developer interview, so thanks for listening to my rambling. Now, I have a really tough question for you guys. If you had to choose the #1 reason why you keep returning to Atlus games, what would that be? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like this, and thanks again to Honkai Star Rail for sponsoring this video. Check out my other Persona analyses and follow me on my other socials. Finally, I want to thank all my patrons, especially Big Klingy, Sam Bezjack, Francesco Santoyo Rego, and Meownalin, Platinum Rose, Malcolm Lowry, Unholy Biscuit, Leviathan8685, Peter Shepard, and Andy.